Man, I don't know about you guys, but I'm almost getting tired of hearing all of the negative shit about Diablo 4. Like, listen, I understand there's not a whole lot to do in the late game of Diablo, but dude, it's driving me nuts. Like, the game is actually pretty good, and the devs are at least giving us a little bit of information about the game in season 2. And I think that if people were to just give it a chance and not hate on Blizzard so hard, I think that this game could really go somewhere. So we are going to dive into the devs, and they're going to be telling us a little bit about what to expect in season 2. So guys, sit back, grab something to drink, and let's get on into it, man. All right, here we go.
Diablo 4. And I'm Rod Ferguson, General Manager of all things Diablo.
So season 2 is going to be launching on October 17th, and it's called the Season
really not
of
that
Blood.
far away.
We're really excited because this is going to be a new vampire threat is essentially invading Sanctuary. And so there's going to be a new quest line, so the player will be partnering with the new character named Eris, who's being voiced by Gemma Chan. So we're super
And see, I think that's kind of cool. Like they're bringing a little bit of difference, like where they said that you're going to be with another character. So like, what are they going to do? Are they going to make it so you have to go through the whole season 2 with this NPC or with some other kind of vampiric little baby? I don't know.
Have her join our really a great ensemble of voice talent. And she thinks she's going to be a great fit for the game. And on top of that, the character is going to gain access to new vampiric powers that you'll be able to use across all of the different classes to take out the new vampire threat that's invaded Sanctuary. So we'll have new legendary items and weapons, new uniques, and it's really going to provide a whole new way to kind of like progress with your character and a new power fantasy.
Yeah, and then from the
I think that's really interesting. Like a new unique vampiric way to play the game. I really think that sounds like a lot of fun.
But that's sort of the theme and story side of it, and then obviously with each season, as part of a live service, we want to do quality of life and make changes to the game, sort of in the end game
Absolutely.
as well. And so, one example of that is in season 2, we're introducing 5 new additional bosses. Because we look at what is the progress you make from level, say 50 to 100. And we wanted to have more milestones along the way where you can be like, oh, I can test my build against these certain types of bosses.
Yeah.
And we also know there's a huge desire for our uniques and the uber uniques because they have a very low drop rate, and sometimes they really solidify your build. And so now with these 5 new bosses, you can actually target uniques, and you can go and have a much higher drop rate on an uber unique than you would in the open world.
Those 5 bosses.
And see, I think that's good because you want to have something that you do that's going to make it so you have a higher chance of getting a specific item. And once you get that item, you feel like you have accomplished something. So I'm really excited for that.
It's interesting because the way people approach this kind of stuff now is they're very invested. So like at the same time as being excited, there's a level of cynicism towards everything that is coming out. So I saw the 5 bosses, excitement, and then immediately people were like, are they just going to be reskins of a boss that we know 5 times? So can you talk about like what those 5 bosses will actually entail?
It's a mixture of sort of like new and sort of, one of the things we heard a lot from players was like, I don't think we've ever even talked much about it, where the bosses are coming from, but there's a notion of like, I play these campaign bosses and I didn't necessarily get to fight them ever again unless I'm playing the campaign. So that's part of the inspiration. So there's going to be definitely like ways we can leverage content we've had, but also new content as well. And so that, the fact that we're doing it in the seasonal and the eternal is going to be really exciting. And again, that idea of like, we've heard a lot of feedback around the uber unique. So, and what's really interesting is that actually it's a boss ladder. So it's not like in Diablo 2 where you would just go farm a boss over and over and over and over again. There's actually sort of prerequisites to be able to summon a boss that you'll have to go through the bosses to get there. And so it's actually has its own gameplay involved in even having a boss appear.
I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, that makes me a little nervous. I think that they're kind of not giving a lot of information on that. You know what I mean? Like,
what happens when something goes out?
Very, I don't know. They're not really giving us a lot about that. And I'm really kind of worried about how he just explained the bosses. He really didn't go that far into detail, and I feel like maybe they don't really know, but I guess we'll see.
When do you start to pick up on the general sentiment from the audience? What is it, data points? Is it social media? how do you know what the sentiment is?
So with live service development, I mean, we're always paying attention to the community. So we're looking at all sources of feedback. We solicit surveys to some of our players, so we use that as one kind of funnel for information. We look at telemetry and data that's like coming back from like, you know, the back end. So we kind of see like where there are pain points or friction from just looking at data. But then also we're paying attention to, you know, forums, when we do a blog post or release patch notes.
Yeah, I mean, they're really paying attention to people and what they're saying on the forums for sure.
From the community. And we use that to kind of help inform some of the, you know, decision points for the future. And so what's great with the live service is like between seasons, patches, hot fixes, there's numerous kind of vehicles for us to kind of like inject change and evolve the game for the future. And it's always in pursuit of making the best possible experience for the players.
It's one of the challenges.
And I agree with that. You know, whenever this game came out, everybody knew that there was going to be different seasons. So I agree that whenever they're trying to push in different directions, like everyone needs to kind of chill out a little bit and just let them push the content and let us see what they're going to bring next.
The idea of the vocal minority, like sometimes a very small group can be very loud, and that's why we use things like surveys, like because you're always managing sort of the qualitative information you get, where people's just opinions, and then the quantitative information you have, which is the actual data that shows what's actually happening. And it's in a game where it's sort of built on a power fantasy, like everybody loves candy, right? And so but you can't have candy all the time. And so that's one of the hard parts about managing, is that sometimes there's a little bit of medicine and you need some sugar to go with it, right? And so as we're looking at our feedback and we're looking at what we need to do to balance the world, because we want every build to be playable and we want every build to be viable. And so sometimes you have to sort of manage that across all the different classes and all the different builds. And sometimes you need a little medicine. And I think one of the things as we look at season 1, we want to really show that we're being responsive and reactive and being agile, but we sort of got 2/3 of the way there, and we had a lot of the medicine, but we didn't have the sugar yet. And so, but to be able to act quickly, we sort of said, well, that's good. We've got the fix, but when we didn't bring and here's the other fun part that makes that balance work. And so I think that's part of the criticism of season 1, is that we did the medicine, didn't quite yet do the sugar, and then we've been doing the sugar as we go now. And it was something our game director talked about in one of the live streams, is that moving forward, anytime we have to do any sort of significant balance, we'll always have that other side of it, like, because it's really about, you know, we're making the game for player joy. We're making the game the best game we can for players. And so, but sometimes they have to have a salad. They can't have ice cream for dinner every night, you know. And
you know what? I really love that they just said that. You know what I mean? Like, I really do. I think them saying, okay, the sugar or the medicine, whatever that was, you know, whatever, however they wanted to say it, I love that they actually noticed that they needed, if they bring one aspect, that they need to bring a little bit of the other aspect. And that, yes, okay, you need some salad to balance the diet. I get that, what he's saying there, but you know, I love that they actually just admitted that they weren't giving enough information to everyone to be able to come to a conclusion on what was to come was going to be good enough or not.
You just have to kind of balance your messaging, manage expectations, communicate more openly, and I think we're doing that now.
Absolutely.
You mentioned it earlier, but how do you?
Okay, he said that they're going to do that in season 2. Okay, then they better stick to their word, right?
To them, but also not balancing that with the realistic kind of achievements that you can do, because it's obviously like Diablo 4 comes out, everyone's super positive, and everyone is like really up on it, and the vast majority of people are enjoying it. But then the conversation quickly turns into like, this is missing, that is missing, but that conversation is very much defined and pushed by a group of people that are at level 100 or 80, and they're the only people that are like really vocal.
I'm curious to know how they respond to this question.
Like when people are looking at it, oh, this is a really pervasive issue, and it's actually just a small group of people. How do you like approach that, and is there anything that you do to try and tell your own team, like, hey, I know it looks like this, but we have to think about everyone, and how do you message that out as well?
Yeah, I mean,
that's a very tricky situation to be, and that's why, you know, the other day I made a very like almost negative video about Diablo, but I've really kind of stepped back a little bit, because we all don't know how hard it could really be to make a game for the masses and to to put in things that are fun and to put in things that are needed and to keep everyone happy in the meantime. So yeah,
data really helps there, so you can actually see what's happening with the game, and you can go like, oh, you know, this might be an issue for people who are level 100, and this is the percentage of people who've actually gotten there so far, and we can sort of look at how big of an issue that actually is. But I mean, I don't want to say vocal minority to be dismissive, because sometimes that vocal minority are also your influencers and the people who are, you know, the tastemakers who will be like, hey, this is how we feel about it, and we want to take that in as well. And that's why it's always is a balance between knowing
he's
what
like
are we hearing
Asmongold,
and what
stop
are we
talking
seeing
shit
in the game and what are we feeling when we play. And I think that notion of like, hey, you know, one of the things we were excited about with D4 is that as a mainline game, no other Diablo game actually had any end game at all. Like when the campaign rolled credits, you were done. And so we were really happy with D4 to have Helltide and Nightmare Dungeons and the Tree of Whispers and PvP. And so we felt like this was a great starting place. And so when we talked, even if
and I agree with that too. You know, like yes, there's not a whole lot to do, but there is things that you can do. I mean, you could go extreme PvP, you could go extreme Tree of Whispers, you could max out your build. I mean, there are still things you can do.
Our interviews pre-launch, we would talk about this is the beginning and not the ending of Diablo. You know, this is a foundation we're building upon, and you're seeing that like in season 2 with these 5 additional bosses. In season 3, we're going to be bringing in leaderboards. Like this is an
season 3 leaderboards. There it is, baby.
Evolution of a game over time, and so the notion that you can kind of grind your way to 100 and go like, what the heck? Where's everything I was expecting? Like all that stuff is being layered in over time as we go, and we're continuing to make the game, you know, better and better. So it really is just sort of like definitely take in what you hear, but also, you know, trust but verify. Go and see what the data is telling you as well.
In addition to that, I think the other important piece of this is transparency, right? So we're really trying to create and be open with our community about setting expectations. Like, here's what we're trying to do in the near future, releasing patch notes early.
They're like, let's sit here and pretend
really
to play
just,
a game.
You know, having live streams, the campfire chats, letting our audience know, like, here's what we're trying to do in the short term. Here are things we want to even do in the medium term. Like he mentioned, leaderboards for season 3. Like we're trying to just like, you know, be more open about that information versus like holding everything to the vest.
And Joe in our last, you know, he talked about philosophy. Like here's why we're doing certain things. Because I think it's one thing to say what you're doing, another thing to say why you're doing it. And so I think helping people understand like, oh, this is our goal, this is what we're trying to accomplish, and just give some background to why these decisions are being made.
Create an amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, they need. I agree. They don't have to, you know, give us as much as what they've given us, but they are seeming like they are trying to at least give a little bit more, and you got to give them credit for that, guys. You really do. Like, no matter how much of a hater you are, you gotta realize that they are trying to give you more, so that way you know what's happening in the future of Diablo.
With, you know, the patch came out and it nerfed some stuff, and you're like, okay, we did it wrong, we won't do that again. And then you talk about all the vehicles you have to kind of approach it. How do you feel about the expectation that creates? Because it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Where you're like, oh, we can like react, but then the expectation from the audience is when they demand something, they need it immediately, and they're like, why do you put it? How do you guys as developers feel about that, and how do you try and manage those expectations?
It is a balancing act.
That's hard.
Depending
that would be hard
on what
to
it
do.
is we're trying to address. I mean, it can obviously
Especially
take
so many
time
voices,
to get
man.
it right? You don't want to be too hasty to just rush, you know, change, because you may end up like imbalancing the game in a different way that you maybe didn't foresee. So you have to take your time to really think through, like, okay, how do we want to address the problem that's been flagged? Look at it in terms of priority as well. There's oftentimes competing priorities, so it's like making sure you're targeting the thing that's going to have the biggest impact for the player first and foremost, and then finding the right, you know, time to release those things. And so
and see like us players, we get into a game and we're like, oh, we see this one issue, right? We see this one issue, and that is all that we see behind this. We don't see the behind the scenes. We don't know. They might be battling that the server's about to shut down, and all of us are pissed off as hell because we can't get this one item or this one little glitch. You know what I mean? Like, give them some credit, guys. Give them a little slack. We don't know what it's like to be creating a game for so many people.
A balancing act that, you know, our leadership and our designers have to really kind of like work through for each issue as it comes through.
Yeah, it's also complexity of the development process. You know, when we look at, we have essentially 3 teams working on the seasonal side. There's like, we have our odd teams, so like doing season 1, then season 3, then season 5. We have our even teams doing season 2, season 4, and then we have another team that's focused on what's going on in the live game. And so on top of those 3 teams, who are like, the odds and evens are leapfrogging each other. We've got our live team, and then we actually have an expansion team working as well. And so when we hear a piece of feedback,
I wonder how many people
there's
are in
always
each
a
team.
conversation. If we agree with it, then it's like, is this a short term? Hey, we can do that as a hot fix overnight. Is this more of a patch that has to come in 2 weeks, or actually is something we're going to address next season because of the way that, you know, we're a lot of the ways, that's part of the thing. Like when we put out season 1 was finished when we released, and so there was no real player feedback yet, other than sort of the beta feedback. But
Yeah.
after launch, like season 1 was kind of done, and so that's why we use that preseason time to tweak as much as we could, and why we, you know, removed the need for the altars of Lilith and that kind of thing. So it's just that notion that like the trains are always running, right? The trains are always leaving the station, and what can get on at which train is always part of the balancing act of like, oh yeah, we agree with that feedback. Now which train can we actually make it on, and are we willing to delay other things to make that happen? Because I think sometimes people just feel like it's always additive, and really it's kind of like there's only so much scope that a team can do. And so to say like, oh, this new idea wants to come in, well then that means usually another idea needs to get postponed. And so when we're talking about the prioritization, it's like, oh, we want to do this, are we willing to slow down this other thing? You know, and so that's definitely one of the things, the give and takes you have to do when you're balancing.
Right, I mean, so hey, we have to slow down. You guys, you want I don't know, more mob density. I'm just throwing an idea, but now we're gonna, you know, slow down leaderboards because they got to focus on trying to get mob density or whatever, you know. So that's
I don't
yeah, I
say
get it.
misunderstanding, but a lot of the kind of discussion is also attributed to things like the battle pass system and the season model as well. And some people say it doesn't feel like it works in Diablo. And, you know, we've had other people make games similarly, like the Path of Exile, keep looking at and be like, we're learning a lot from the viability of something like a battle pass model. How often do you kind of like reassess that, and do you think it does still work in this day and age, especially because it's like a lot of cosmetic stuff and you don't want to upset the balance, and when it is like you can't put a lot of meaningfully changing content in there, is it even worth doing? How do you approach like looking at that kind of system?
Now, there is one thing that I will say. Back in the day when I used to game, we never had battle passes. I think battle passes are completely freaking stupid. I think that it's a complete waste of money, and I hate that every single game, or let me say, most every single game has a battle pass. Like, why do we need battle passes? Yes, I understand that Diablo or Blizzard needs to have money to make updates. I get it. I 100% understand. And yes, majority is mostly cosmetics. But man, like, we don't always need that in our faces. Like, let us play the game, enjoy the game. We already spent $75 or $100 on the game. However many people bought the game, like, that's a lot of money to begin with. Why do we need a battle pass? It's so, it just drives me crazy.
That's what we're learning now. Like, you know, that's one of the things is like, we're having lots of conversation about the first time we've done something, you know, and so in times we'll come together and we'll go like, hey, everybody, this is one data point, you know, and like, and we're looking at season 1 and like, what's the battle pass doing? What's the shop doing? What is the seasonal reset doing? How do we feel about it? And it's like, at the end of the day, it's one data point. And so I'm really excited for season 2 on October 17th, because that's now we'll have 2 data points to go like, okay, how many people are playing? How many people are engaging with battle pass and shop? How's it all working? And so I think this is all learning for us. Like, I know people tend to think like,
I will never
you had 10
buy
years
the
with
battle
Diablo
pass.
3, you must know everything. And the answer is very different games, very different team. And so
They already got my money for the game. I am not buying a battle pass.
So for us, it's really, this is a lot of learning for us. So we're going to, you know, make some mistakes as we're trying to make the game better and better.
Yeah. Do you think there's kind of like a different expectation on a team like the Diablo team, or even a developer like Blizzard? Yeah, because obviously you're seen as one of the biggest developers in the world, but the thing that you're introducing is still quite new to you. Or there's the expectation, well, this is Blizzard, they shouldn't be allowed to stumble or able to stumble. They should know this stuff. Like, how do you kind of like approach that sentiment,
that's a
knowing
tricky
that
question.
there's no like pushing back against it?
I mean, I think it's just like we're all kind of just working our way through it. It's like sure, we have a lot of benefits of being part of Blizzard, and we had a lot of learnings, and we were able to talk to each other and understand what's going on in WoW and what's going on in Overwatch, and we can talk to each other. But at the end of the day, this team is like doing a live service like this is new for this team, and even we have some D3 veterans and things, but a lot of our team, like there's a good part of our team where Diablo 4, we were at the launch party where I was like, how many people, this is your first game ever? And like a bunch of hands go up and you're like, this is the very first game they've ever shipped is Diablo 4. And so there's definitely...
Now that is not our fault. They should have done better at hiring then, right? I'm just saying, like, if you have this big of a game, knowing how many people love Diablo, and you're going to say, how many of you haven't worked on a game and there's that many hands? Dude, you cannot tell me that you don't have the funds to make sure that you pay the people and have the people in the right positions and the right experience. Come on.
Combination of experience and the ability to access Blizzard, but like we're still going to learn as we go. And so yeah, I mean, I think I get the, hey, you're Blizzard, you should never make a mistake, but at the same time, like, again, the industry is always changing, the games are always changing, the players are always changing, so it's just going to be learning as we go. And that's why what I love about a live service is we can evolve over time. It's not a fixed state, and so that with each season, and we're going to support the game for years to come, is that we can evolve and learn as we go.
I think what's fascinating about that is because we have a studio like you guys where you very much are like figuring it out as you go along to a degree, and it's kind of like the expectation is, why are you doing this? You should have the perfect product each time, and it's not thought of as great. But then on the flip side, you have a team like Larian, which just put out one of the best RPGs in a long time, but it was developed over 3 years of iterating, very publicly forward-facing, and people are celebrating that right now. It must be kind of wild to be in an industry where you can have two contradicting kind of like narratives on the same thing going, and like how do you deal with it on a day-to-day basis as developers?
They all have that. I mean, I'm just really happy that this feels like the year of the RPG, and like a Starfield and Final Fantasy and Hogwarts, and all the stuff that's going on. So I'm just excited to be part of that. And I think they each have their own place when you think about like the turn-based versus the hack and slash versus, the third person versus isometric. Like, I think it's really cool that the RPGs can have such a diversity. And so, I don't know, I just think it's great that RPGs is really coming to the top this year.
You know what? I really do honestly think that Diablo 4 has the potential to be a very good game. I think that anybody that is slamming them right now is just talking to talk. Like, I really think that Blizzard, now listen, I know the things that have happened in the past with Blizzard, but I really do feel like they are trying. I think that we're going to keep playing this game. I think that we're going to give it a shot. I'm very excited about Season 2, and I'm really excited about what is to come with Diablo 4. Guys, if you love Diablo and you want to stay up to date on all Diablo information, if you want a few build videos, if you want to know what's going on with the patches, if you want all this information, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We are trying to build a community of Diablo lovers, and we are taking it one person at a time. I love you guys. If you want to watch more videos, right here we got my newest video of my build that I use for Barbarian, and right over here we have the video that I did recently of the patch notes or what we saw for Season 2. I love you guys. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next video. Let's go get it. Ha ha.